chart at the moment, but it's going to be, I have no idea how long it's going to be. It's going to be a full treatment of like, yeah, how I approach the moon. If I'm talking about intentions or like releasing intentions, what do I mean by that? What did I do with my chart? What is my like conceptualization and like where am I coming from on how I use it? How do I justify or rationalize it? Because I've been like hedging in the other lunar videos. I start to say something and I'm like, oh, but like I'll talk about it another time. And it's like, should I talk about it now? Should I give a debrief? I want to have something I can reference where it's like, if you want to know what I'm talking about in depth, go check out that reference. Because not every video can be 3 hours long. And I'm going to run out of patience of like explaining myself. And so, at the risk of never fully explaining myself fully, because there's never a time and I'm tired and I didn't script it out or blah blah blah. So, hope you're not getting tired of that sound effect. Um, I'm just going to do the one all reference, and then whatever comes through in the other videos comes through, or like gains different perspectives as we go, because yeah, I want to have something where I know I've talked about it before, so I don't have to worry about like explaining myself fully every time, right? Okay, so in our diagram of the moon and its phases, the real diagram, I'll link to the place in the basics video where I do the like ball maneuver and show what's actually going on. Half of the moon's face is always fully lit by the sun. That's just the nature of a ball being in front of a lamp. And so this fully lit phase or face is not always shining towards us. So in a new moon, not only is the part of the moon that we could see in shadow, it's in shadow for a lot of the time, but we could still possibly see it because of earth shine, like just the light in our atmosphere and from the sun bouncing off the earth and then to the moon, and then we could see it. So it's faint, but like we could still see it. But the moon is also with the sun, so at nighttime when we go to look for the moon, there's nobody there. And so our symbol for this is a no moon. And then when we come around to a first quarter, whichever direction you want to go, when we come around to the first quarter, this line falling kind of perpendicular to us, straight away from us, because the moon is in this like square configuration to the light source from our perspective, that is how we get the appearance of half her face being lit. During the full moon, we get the full moon symbol because the entire circle is lit, and then again for the other side, for the third quarter, we've got that like straight line. And I believe like the further, like this shape shifts and turns, so you'll be at some latitude on the planet and she'll be, she'll have a normal swing to her opening crescent and her waning crescent, her waxing crescent and her waning crescent, her new crescent and her balsamic phase. And then as you like go across the globe and over the equator, it like tilts. So there are places where the quarter moon is like this half up and down shape. But anyway, I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to approach the moon in a couple different ways. The most common analogy that there is, in my opinion, is the gardening analogy. This is also how I learned it. I am also going to use an analogy for like where you kind of end up on a stage, like in the spotlight for whatever reason. And then we're going to be bringing in what we already know or what we can bring in from like planets ruling certain aspects and who's associated with what, to tie together all the meanings that I have for dealing with the moon and what I will reference in future lunation videos when I'm like, if you want to know where I'm coming from on that, or like how to do what I'm saying now, like go to that video. Okay? Okay. Okay, so let's go over some basics. If you have an astrology chart, and Sun has moved into Libra, and we say that we're in Libra season, and you set intentions in a Libra style, this new moon Libra season lunation is when Sun and Moon are conjunct in Libra, and then 2 weeks later Moon will pour on over to Aries and illuminate our intentions, illuminate, offer perspective and a light to shine on what's going on in Libra season. So that's the basic premise, is that you're going to have a new moon in some sign, and then 6 months later you're going to have a full moon in the same sign. You're going to have a new moon in some sign, and 2 weeks later you're going to have a full moon in the opposite sign. Right? So instead of math notation of like let X represent, let's keep it astrological and say that when we have a new moon somewhere, a place of reference, always where we are, conjunction, ascendant, whatever you want, in 6 months' time, in the same spot, or in the same sign at least, we have a full moon. So it's like this energy initiates and then it releases. And the basic cycle is you could look at it releasing not only 2 weeks later from when the moon moves across and creates a release point, like directly 2 weeks within, that energy builds and then it can offshoot, it can depressurize through the full moon, being in opposition and going, oh, I see, I get perspective, let's let it go. I can acknowledge it now. But also on a longer time scale, you can think of this new moon setting a seed that you then realize 6 months later, and you finally get perspective on it because now there's a light shining here, right? Then in all of the videos, I'll be going through the 3-year gestation, which instead of having new moon, quarter moon, full moon, third quarter moon, you know, day 0, and then so this is like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then on day 28 we're at a new cycle, right? So 1 week, 2 week, 3 week. This takes a full week to do. When we get to this full moon, that's been 2 weeks. When we get to the third quarter moon, that's been 3 weeks. And the getting through the final quarter moon takes us all the way through to the 4 weeks on a new one, right? It's chapter math. You got to get through the last chapter. So this is the like short cycle. Then we have the longer 6-month cycle. So in the short cycle, in the monthly cycle, we have a new moon someplace and a full moon, generally speaking, in opposition to it. It's on the other side of the chart, beaming down like perspective information from that other side. On a longer scale, you can look at your intentions or the growth of things, the development of things over 6 months when we have a new moon, and then a full moon, and then a new moon, and then a full moon in the same sign. So you're going to see that ebb and flow, that, gestation and birth and release over and over again on that time scale. Now, this 6 month time scale is, I believe, often commonly used as an 18-month. So you would set an intention or whatever, and then you would really kind of examine how it's done past the first year and at the following full moon. And what is that lined up to but our 3-year gestation cycle, where we have each of these phases taking 9 months. And all being in the same sign. So here are the levels of cycles we have. We have the short cycle, which is you're going to set an intention or you're going to observe the start of something with a new moon. And then you're going to see some fruition, you're going to release it, you're going to get illumination on it from the opposing side in 2 weeks from just the next full moon. That's one cycle. Great. Take it all down over the next 2 weeks to get ready for a new cycle. Fantastic. What you can also do is you can take new moon and full moon in one place and the cycle of that over every 6 months. So you'll have a new moon, and then 6 months later, as the sun goes to the other side of the chart, that's where you'll have a full moon, and then you'll keep on trading and trading and trading. Often the reference to the 6-month cycle leans on, you see a lot of resonance by turning that into an 18-month cycle. So instead of looking at the next full moon, you'll look at the one after. You'll wait a whole year and a half instead of just half a year to see what's really come up. And this 18-month going down into the green part, that lines up with the 9-month or 3-year lunar gestation period cycles, where each of these phases, instead of taking 1 week in the regular, that's how the moon's phases work, and those phases will all be essentially square to each other, right? As the moon moves through a square configuration, those signs will be roughly square to each other. If we want to look at a new moon, a first quarter moon, a full moon, and a third quarter moon all in one spot, and see not only what started here and how is it developing, which you can get perspective on from the other side. Not only what started here and how is it developing here, but actually getting the beats of development from this spot. And so that's the lunar gestation cycle. It focuses all of these phases into a tighter spot over a longer time period. So if the short cycle is too short, if figuring out something to set intentions to, or like peeling through your chart extensively every month or every 2 weeks, if that's too much, then okay, that's fine. You can come in twice a year to a certain part of your chart you're trying to investigate. You can come in every 9 months. This is a nice one. This is a really long-term one. And it takes like the urgency and the hustle out of like figuring out now, because you're not going to figure it out now. It takes time. Okay, a couple more concepts I want to illustrate before I start putting it all together come from how I relate to the new moon and gravity, and that relates to the full moon as well, and then also illumination. So illumination we've already kind of talked about. A solar season in Libra, and you maybe set some intentions, and then to these intentions you have a full moon in Aries beaming down. And so not only does the moon illuminate, and so we have ideas there of illumination, but this idea that it's like actually illuminating the opposing sign. It's actually shedding a light here back to where the sun is. It's hard to get a good look at the sun because she's so bright, moving where she moves. And so the opposing full moon, sending that light back here, offers a perspective point, a balance point, a time to assess. So I want to talk about illumination, not only because the moon illuminates and has light to give, but like specifically illuminating into the sign. I hope that makes sense. And now the big one, the fun one. So if we have, we're going to have to draw this a couple different times. If we have the big sun, just where the sun is, and out on our ecliptic, on our orbit, we're spinning. And we've got the moon somewhere. Let's talk about gravity. So the sun is holding Earth kind of in its orbit and attracting the Earth in. The reason we don't fly in is largely because of Jupiter and Saturn kind of holding us back. But whatever, we're locked into an orbit around the sun. And like all of the planets in the solar system are centered around the gravity of the sun. And just as we're pulled into the gravity of the Earth, like we are pulled down into that gravity of the sun. The moon goes all around us and has a gravity of her own, not really big enough to pull the Earth out of the orbit with the sun, possibly enough to influence it so that we're in this like habitable, like this livable zone. But what does moon pull around but the tides? So there's high tides and low tides, and there's something called neap tides. Now I am in a landlocked prairie location, born and raised, and so feel free to correct me if I get this totally wrong. But we've got the Earth here, and Earth doesn't really like shift too much in her orbit. We'll just say that Earth is where Earth is, locked on the railroad track of the orbit, always kind of around the sun. And then water, all the oceans, are going to be like, oh, hey, the moon can pull us kind of away. Now, it's not that dramatic, but like the moon is pulling everything that can be pulled, everything that's not like locked into the Earth and part of the body of the Earth, and thus locked into like a solar directed centrifugal whatever. It's all pulling away. And so, what that gives us is that when you have, let this ball be the Earth, this is going to be the equator, so this is how we spin along the equator, and then we're tilted, right? So let's say this guy here is on the day side of the planet, and at 2 p.m. in the afternoon is having a low tide because all of the water is being pulled by the full moon over here away from the shoreline, and it's massing up on this side of the planet. So buddy over here on the daytime side of a full moon day, who's facing the sun, has a low tide. Then 12 hours later, the Earth has spun about and is now on the nighttime side. So people who 12 hours before were having a high tide have now rotated into the low tide. And people that had the low tide have now rotated into the high tide because now there's all this water lapped up onto the shore. And you're like, but the moon moves as well, so whatever. Okay, in a 12-hour span, moon moves approximately 30 minutes or half of a degree every hour. And so in half a day, moon will do half of her travel. Her regular travel is somewhere between 12 and 14 degrees a day. So she's going to have moved about 6 degrees. So she's still just going to be up here creating a high tide for a portion of the planet at all times to be rotating into, and a low tide on the daytime side of the planet where the water is being pulled away from. So in a full moon, the daytime side of the planet is having a low tide, and the full moon or the nighttime side of the planet is having a high tide. So the gravity of the sun is pulling us, the Earth body, to the sun. And the sun is often equated to like self, to the all, to the shining light. Whereas the moon is pulling away with her gravity, which is often like an emotional gravity, right? Now I'm blending gravity, I'm blending like the ideas of what's working with the ideas of astrology, right? So with a more like emotional, less centered, less self, more transient, more like it's just a phase, mom, literally just the phases you go through. Emotional gravity that's pulling away literally anything that's not nailed down. And so having a space to release what's not nailed down and let it float away, to not hold it because it's not part of your gravity, that's the full moon idea. In the quarter moon phase, the water's being pulled around, so we're still having like low tide, high tide, but it kind of evens out a bit, I think. Again, I don't really know. But then in the new moon phase, all of the water is being pulled a lot more tightly. So I believe this is called a neap tide, where now in a new moon, the daytime side of the planet is in the high water, in the high tide, and it's high high. It's a high high tide. There's high tide and then there's high high tide. And then the nighttime side of the planet on a new moon is in the low tide, but this time it's a low low tide because we have the combined gravity of the sun and the moon bringing all the things this way. Whereas in the full moon, the gravity of the sun is still acting, and so moon isn't strong enough to pull like every little last drop off the surface of the planet and like into a higher tide. But here, because they're acting together and it's a contraction of self, a confluence of self, earth and moon and sun gravity all together into one bundle of self, is the new moon, is the time to set intentions for self, whereas the full moon is the time to release what did not stick, what did not take root, what is just meant to be flow will flow. For the gardening analogy, we have our new moon, which is like setting intentions and it's like planting the seed. And then we come into the first quarter, which is things have been sprouting. It feels like a passive process, but it's an active process. Things have been sprouting as the moon gains light and shape. And now things are at a stage where you have to decide what you're going to do about it. If you want, like, so now you've noticed, oh, it's really there, and now it needs some action from me. Now I have to decide, like with the square, right? You got to choose. You can't have it all. You got to decide one. Do you want the potential of what this can grow into and what you can harvest of what was planted? Do you want this bad enough to put in the energy required to weed out everything that's not there, to prune parts of it, even though that might feel counterintuitive, and to like put up some structures to support it while it continues to mature, like some trellises or whatever. And you can apply this analogy to like you started a new habit and you notice the habit has actually started to work. So now you have to decide, are you just going to let that float naturally in a hands-off approach, or are you going to apply and be like, well, I'm going to give more space for that habit to grow. I'm going to weed out what's competing for space or resources for the habit, and I'm going to be responsible and like prune the habit as necessary, even if it feels irresponsible to like take some of it down or spend some time away from it. I'm going to like cull it or cultivate it a bit, and to put some structures in place to better support the habit. So if I'm trying to start a habit of like waking up and drinking water, I'm going to start putting in another habit of filling up my water before bed, or like making sure there's a jar in the bathroom and the kitchen and the living room or whatever. So that's the gardening analogy. And then you get up into the full moon, which is where you kind of you harvest, you enjoy, you reap what you sow, and you realize what worked and what didn't. You have some thoughts about, should you have put the work in? Was that worth it? You know, you reap what you sow, essentially. Plus all the environmental factors that kibosh what you sow and the effort you put in, or the luck that comes in that means maybe you didn't need to do that work or it gets really boosted. Now in this time where you may be bitter, so it's like a time to release the bitterness, like it doesn't matter. you have the harvest you have. You got to work with it. So this is another, it feels kind of like a passive time where you're just like enjoying those fruits and what you have and coasting off of the full moon until you get to the third quarter. So now you have the empty garden, and maybe you're going to garden again next year. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're going to take this down and build a pool or a tennis court, or maybe you're just going to go for walks, or maybe you're going to stay inside and read. So you have this space here, and once again you have to decide, is it worth it to you to tear it down? Do you want to tear down these structures in joy or sorrow for what happened, to make space for a different thing to come in, or to, prep it for like we're going to try again next year? Does it not matter enough to put effort in? You're just going to let it lay there, and whatever grows up the trellis and whatever takes root here, that's fine. Like, you'll deal with it at some other time. This is another deciding point, another square about what are you going to do to like take down the garden as you get ready for a new cycle. This cycle specifically, like this part of the cycle, this third quarter into balsamic into the new moon, is one of, there's many instances, there's many transits, there's many events that can cause someone to feel like they're in like a dark night of the soul, and this is one of them. And in the progressed moon phase, when you're like feeling this the most or for the longest time period, that's like a 7 to 8 year thing. Because each in the secondary progressed lunar phase cycle, which we're not dealing with here, but it follows all the same principles, each of these phases takes about 7 years. All right? So this can be really like, I had goals, I had aspirations, I achieved them, and now what? It's a very now what kind of, I don't know what's next. I don't even know what I'm planting. Like, what is happening? It's a very now what kind of time. Okay, so that's the gardening analogy. Okay, now we can do like the stage analogy that I like to use for a couple different things that I talk about. So here we have the idea. You have some ambition, you're going to start something, I know. And it's for, possibly some goal. Maybe you don't even have the goal to be up here. But that's what the full moon is going to be represented by. Like, you're on stage. Here we're going to talk more about the gibbous, the past gibbous phase. Okay, so you have some kind of idea, just like the gardening thing, a seed sprouts. Maybe I'll try this, maybe I'll try that. It's developing, you're messing around with it, you're not paying much attention to it. Yeah, sure, you do it sometimes. But then at the square, you're like, hey, I could make something with this. I could do this, I could share this, whatever it is. I'm going to start this, I'm going to give it my all, I'm going to do it. And then you're coming up to the like reaping, to the harvest, to the illumination, to the full moon. Now, things are flowing. Things are flowing great because we're going from the square into the trine, and that's amazing. This moment here, from the trine, when it turns into the quincunx, which is a very like, how's it going to go? We don't know. There's a lot of different interpretations here. From the quincunx through to the full moon, through to the other quincunx, to the next 150 degrees, all the way out to like the next 120-ish degrees, depending how you want to start that. It's like hands off. You're coasting off of all of the idea and the effort and the flow that came before, and then it's just is what it is. And so with the stage idea, the full moon can be like, you can't change course now. You're coming up onto the stage. So with the garden analogy, if you didn't harvest your corn and it's all rotted, now everyone's laughing and your neighbor won't marry you. If your idea was great, you're going to be pulled up on stage and it's a whirlwind experience, and smile, and do you have anything to say? And then you're going to be sent off the stairs, you're going to be walking down, and you're like the lights are still in your eyes, and it's up and it's over. If this is embarrassing, maybe you get up onto the stage and you trip, and it's like, oh no, And everyone is looking, and you just want to get off there right now. And it's not a good, you're still on the stage. You still just have to get off there. Like, there is no, you still have to coast off into the next phase. This is a very hands off kind of like, it is what it is. Like, prep here because it is what it is. And then, regardless of what it is, just get out of it. And then it will change again. Like, if you're looking for a change, you just have to ride it out. You just have to coast on out of that phase. And then for the third quarter stage, if this was a great idea and it was all your ambitions, you might be like, okay, what now? Who am I now without that goal, that ambition, that trajectory, especially with the second progress, which is such a long cycle. It matches up with the Saturn return cycle, so there's really a lot of questions of like what is my legacy if not that, or if that's over, or if that's all it was, now what? Like if I was pinning all of my I'll be whole, I'll be accomplished, I'll have won when I made it, and then that was it, what now? And then you have to start kind of taking apart those ambitions and those goals and like putting them away to make room for a new cycle, for a new idea, for a new chance to be up on that stage. One of my analogies for this area here, this transition from trine into quincunx, is like you decide to start a new mental health medication here, and then by the trine, you're like, I think I'm gonna go off my meds. They're working, like it's working so well, I feel so good. And the key part about this quincunx area is like, yes, this is an area of trust and of coasting, but it's also the space that you still have to maintain. Similarly, that maintain space is going to be here. We put in some effort and some motivation here at the squares. We decide something, we commit to something, even if that's committing to like, I'm not going to commit to that, I'm going to commit to myself. And then you're going to get through like the hard parts where you have to focus on it, and then you're going to get through the flow parts where like it's coming easy. And then you have to get through the parts where you're bored with it, where like it must be working on its own by now. You have to like maintain that maintenance, or you'll come to check your fruit and it's rotten, or you'll go on stage and you didn't practice since your first pitch and now you're stumbling over your words. You gotta stay on your meds to enjoy the summer. Don't stay off them because summer's made you better. It's what started here. So if you just let go and let nature take its course, that's just something that you're going to reap. That's just part, and a lot of it is random as well. Like it's not all like, what did you do? What did you do? But that's the analogy I have of this, like this little blind spot here, which is the quincunx, a blind spot of, no, it'll be fine. No, I don't need to. Now there is, the relationship of trusting and coasting here. So, like your mileage may vary. People with really active quincunxes and sextiles, because this sextile here is the same. We started in energy and then we flowed with it, and now, whatever health habits you've been implementing to help get you through this, like what now lostness, there's going to be a crunch point of that kind of through the lead up and into the new moon, and then you still have no idea what's going on in the first little bit after the new moon. You can't see anything. The moon isn't there. None of this has sprouted. No ideas have come to anything. Like nothing's there yet. So you've got to maintain these balsamic, like through the balsamic phase, you need to maintain those balsamic habits that kept you level, because it's like the moon hasn't, the light isn't shining till it's shining, right? It hasn't sprouted till it's sprouted. Don't count your chickens before they hatch, etc. So those are the ideas on how to look at the lunar phase. Okay, new moon. The new moon is all about setting intentions. New moon, new life. New moon, new me. New moon, new room. Like do a rearrange or whatever. New, and it's about cycles and phases. New cycles, new phases. With our gravity example, this is a gravity of self. So what I mean by return to a gravity of self is if we have the sun here, we have the sun here and the moon always rotating around the earth and always facing the earth, and this is the side of the moon that we love and she's beautiful. And then you look at the dark side of the moon, which is the side that's tidally locked away from us and thus like takes all the space flack and everything. That part of the moon in a new moon is returning to full light with the sun. And so to me it's like seeing the most scarred, the most unseen, the most misunderstood, the most vilified for being the way you are, even though the way you are is like that because you've like protected or acted in service to the people vilifying you, that is lovingly embraced and welcomed and completely shone upon and accepted and illuminated and warmed by the self. So the new moon is a gravity of self. The new moon is a time to reflect on how do I want to move forward from this central moment of like self, self, self. The sun, the moon, and the earth are all lined up in one point of gravity. It's all here. What is here? What intentions? What is starting? What intentions do you want to set? So that's the gravity of self. We also have the idea of conjunction because here we are in the solar lunar conjunction, right? So we can have our ideas about conjunction being self, all, everything, now, and then again, new cycles, because anytime anything is in a conjunction with where it was in the natal chart, that's a new cycle, right? The new moon is a new cycle, a new phase, a new lunar, solely lunar return every month, right? What else do we have? We have the gravity idea, the conjunction idea. Conjunction is ideas of like solar or the sun and lunar or the moon, because in the Thema Mundi they each originate a portion of, the aspect doctrine, which is the conjunction. So again, we're getting ideas of the self and the spirit and the soul. So we can say, I always interchange spirit and soul. If you have a more strict accounting, go for it. But ideas of spirit and soul and self and body and new and phases and cycles. And then in our gardening idea, we're planting seeds. And in our stage light ball idea, we're having ideas. So this time is often like a throw spaghetti at the wall time, especially with the progressed, like 8 years later at the first quarter, you're going to be like, who knew 8 years ago that little thing that I was doing just for fun or just on the side or just for practice or whatever would be here now in my life. So it can be a very like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know what's going to come up. I don't even know that these are seeds kind of vibe. But if you're trying to have intentions with it, then the new moon is where you set your intentions for a new cycle that again you're either going to release in 2 weeks, in 6 months, in 18 months, or whenever works for you. For an aside on using this system and flow, but following either your hormone cycle or whatever cycle you want, or your natal moon cycle, like lining up to your natal moon phase instead of the new moon, treating your natal moon phase as your new moon, and lining up with that timing instead. I already did a video on that. That's going to be linked below. There's going to be repeat information. Bear with it. So things you want to put down for a new moon. What color can we use? are I intend. It's always important to have an I wish. I wish I was, I wish for. Put a wish out there into the world, into the universe. Give it to the moon, give it to the sun, see what they do. And this can be times when you are seeking for something. So, like, I am ready. I am ready to do something, to start something, to show up as something. All within the themes of the sign of the lunation, and then specific to the topics of the house of your chart, and then whatever planets and whatever else is in there, right? I am ready, I am going, whatever it is. New moons can be a good time to set SMART goals or SMART intentions, which are specific, measured, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Achievable and realistic, I always get, aren't they the same thing? But specific would be like, it's something you, like, you're not just putting out vibes, you are actually writing down that you have an intention, a habit, a goal, something you are going towards. Measurable means you can measure it. You want to walk a certain amount of steps every day, or for a certain amount of time, or you just want to have a check mark every day that you walked. Is it achievable? Do you literally have no time? So, like, achievable and realistic is like, is it achievable? Is it realistic? Have you set yourself up for failure? Do you literally have no time for walk? Are you not spending any kind of time in your day being like, what could I fill this with? Oh, well, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. Do you not have any other habit that you're trying to supplant with walking? If you've got no spare minutes, like, how are you gonna, come on, give yourself a fighting chance. Reachable is, how are you gonna know that you did it? How are you gonna know, like, if it's the vibe-based approach, how are you gonna know that you succeeded at your intention to be nicer to yourself? You need to have some kind of marker for yourself. How are you going to know that you went for a walk? Well, you would have gone for a walk, and you can check off your spreadsheet or whatever. So yes, you can do it. And so this is achievable and realistic, or achievable and reachable, however you work with it. And then time-based is, it's not just off into the ether forever. You're either going to set this intention for 2 weeks, you're going to work on it for 2 weeks, or you're going to stretch it out over the next 6 months or year and a half and create like a plan that follows that. Or you're going to work within a longer 9-month and 18-month period for how you want to set your intentions, because it doesn't have to be a really tight turnaround. But that's one method to go through. The first quarter moon is where we refine and build up our intentions. We're working on them. We apply energy. The idea here is that we have a square energy, which is of Mars, which we know is kind of critical. You've got to make a choice about how you want to apply your energy. You only got one life to live. What are you going to do with it? And we know that squares are a hard aspect. They're kind of uncomfortable. And they have or require friction. So the heat of action can take up the signification of friction because you're doing something about what you want to do, instead of like letting the square work you. That's one approach to like working with the energies if you need that. So in our garden analogy, we are cultivating, fertilizing, building support, weeding, pruning, and allowing, because you can't be in there every moment. You're going to disturb them and ruin growth just as much as you fully neglected them, because you can smother things, right? So it's also that square energy of like, but I want to be in it all the time. And it's like, well, you can't. Like, it's just not how it functions. So you have to take off sometimes, and that as well has got some friction to it. So it's important to know, oh, let's do the other one first. In our ideas side, in our stage ambition side, this is where you notice that there's something to work with. Maybe you've been suspecting that there's been something there for a while, or it's been building up kind of casually, but now it's going to need some kind of effort, some kind of dedication, some kind of structure. It needs your attention. So it's important to remember with the first quarter moon that it's not always about working harder on the intentions you set. It can also be about refining how you set intentions or how you were looking at things, and deciding to let go, tweak, or reset your intentions. So that's also part of this first quarter critical change square energy, is that you're going to like assess and like recalibrate if necessary. This is the time to do that. You set the intentions and like you're trying to work at them, and maybe they're working for the first week, and then by week 2, if you're not into it, if you haven't done it all, reset. Maybe the little idea you had in your head about like, well, no, I don't want to have to go for a walk, I want to sing, but you don't pay attention to that. Maybe by the first week you're like, okay, scratch that, we're not going to go for any walks, we're just going to try and sing every day instead over the next week, and see if that actually happens, if that's something I actually do. Because there's no point in bullying yourself about, I'm going to try harder, if you're not even doing it. I'm going to skip to the third quarter so we can spend a lot of time on the full moon. So the third quarter mirrors the first quarter in that we're putting effort in, but now we're like tearing down. Or we have, it's time to dismantle. So whatever intentions were set, however they turned out, it's time to like take that and realize that that cycle's over. That thing is ending, and it's time to begin to think about moving on. So it's just going to be the same energy as this, but instead of, here's another part we didn't talk about. God, there's a lot to talk about. Here we are waxing, which means we are increasing in size and light and shape. It's about growth. Here we are waning, and we are losing light, we're losing shape, we're losing like the amount of light hours we have at nighttime. It's all going away. It's about shedding and releasing, and just having it, just as much as it was adding on, having it take away. So this is where the ideas of building up and taking down are also supported by. They come from the shape and how the moon behaves in her cycle. That's how we get these growth cycles. So the first quarter is kind of like, what do you want? And the third quarter, it's too early to be thinking about like, what do I want? So it's like, how do I clear space so that this question can be answered the least frustratingly? You don't necessarily clean up your kitchen, even though you're not planning to cook, because you should, or because you'll be judged, or because of pests. Like, those are all reasons. But you have your counter cleaned, and you have your space ready to work, so that you can just go work when it's time to work. You don't have to show up and be like, I have to clean up all this from the last thing. Why didn't I do it then? Right? So the first quarter moon is like, what do you want? You can see something's coming up, and do you want what's coming up bad enough to like invest in it and see it grow and harvest what it's going to be? Or are you fine to be like, it can be what it is, I'd rather keep my energy? That same question is here, but instead of knowing what's coming, it's like, are you willing to put in the energy to like clear out all the old stuff, even though they may have beautiful memories about the season that just passed, or the ambitions and the accolades you just got? Are you willing to clear that aside and make space, energetically, emotionally, whatever, for a new cycle, a new inspiration, a new season to come in? So those are kind of the differences. Just as the first quarter moon has this like assessment and recalibration, that's essentially the vibes of the third quarter moon. Like, what in the environment has clearly run its course, and as painful or bittersweet as it may be to let it go, what is it time to let go, so that we have like a clean slate at the next time? There's also, we're going to talk about releasing with the full moon, but there's a sense of releasing with the third quarter moon, so we'll add that in. All right, full moon time. So there's 3 angles I want to come in on the full moon with. The first one is that this is a time of illumination and thus celebration, but also a time to release, particularly negative release, like release negative energy, let go of the bad. Whereas we're going to come down to the third quarter moon for our more positive releasing, and we'll talk about why. So the first part of illumination is that the light from the sun passes over or by the earth, hits the moon, and then that pings down onto the earth, and we think it's beautiful. And literally, the night is illuminated. You can read by it, you can walk by it, you can work by it. So it's like we have a full amount. It's like we have a double day. So if you kind of go through a cycle of like, I just wish there were a few hours in the day. Sometimes it's probably from centuries and eons and generations of having that like extra day once a month over a couple nights at nighttime where it literally is bright enough to work. So like why not? So we have illumination there because literally there is light in the sky and on the planet and at nighttime, and you can open your eyes in the middle of the night and be like, who is shining a light outside my window? How come I am seeing like the shadows on the wall that I usually only see in the daytime? Full moon. That is full moonlight. But also, as I talked about in my preamble, we have like a sign where generally speaking you set your intentions from 2 weeks ago, 6 months ago, a year and a half ago, whenever. And now we are having some kind of illumination on or in that place because of where the light is coming from. So in the 2 week cycle, that illumination is coming from an opposite place. So it's a direct line of sight. If you had like a lamp across from you, that's an opposition. The idea of the opposition being one of illumination from the idea of the full moon. Like it's a full circle idea here. So we use the full moon to illuminate how we did, to like get perspective on how we did with our intentions. So we can like see clearly, clear perspective, assess how the intentions and like how the build up phase went for us. What happened? Let's shine a light on it. This can be nice if you're setting like Pisces intentions, which are like, I'm going to follow how I feel. And then Virgo full moon will be like, okay, but what are you doing about it? Or Aries new moon is going to be like, I'm going to go after what I want. And then you get that flash of Libra insight, that balancing, oppositional illumination, like full perspective, full acknowledgement. I see you clearly in a way you can't see yourself. Of asking, that those Aries intentions, like just for a moment, take a moment to appreciate that every individual is having the same, like, I'm going to do what I want, I'm going to go after me. Like, you're one individual among many. So, like, just take a moment to appreciate that under the full light of the moon, right? So, that's one idea of illumination. Next, we're going to look at celebration. Celebration, because it's the moon, and all of that light in the sky is like a joyous thing. And why not look back with a good eye? So this is not only if you did your goals and you can congratulate yourself on putting the effort in there, but it's also looking back 2 weeks, 6 months, year and a half, 3 years longer, and seeing over time how have you progressed in these themes, in these intentions, even if it didn't work out, and now you know more about yourself and about what was maybe a conditioned expectation. Oh, I should want that. I should work towards that. And what you now know as like, I don't care about that. And that's incredible information to have. The stuff you don't want to do is like almost as important or as integral as what you want to do. Because if you don't know where to go, it's helpful to stop getting into what you don't want to do. So you got to celebrate not only the progress that you've made, but the changes that you've made and like the boundaries you've set and the self-knowledge that you've gained with this illumination. So you're going to celebrate your progress regardless of what it is. You're going to take the ideas of the intentions in either place, and you're going to look back over time and you're going to really give yourself credit for how far you've come. Even if you've had like a whole list of stuff on this side and you took one of those things and that still pans out, great. Now you know. Now it's solid. And then we're going to talk about release. So I want to talk about release because of that gravity stuff we talked about, where the sun and the earth are here on this side, like holding the body to itself. And then the moon is pulling up everything that's not nailed down to the body of the earth or your body. If it's not literally a part of you and part of your foundation, time to go. And we get a lot of like frustration and like antsiness around the full moon. I think not only because we're not given this kind of you get a free extra couple days in the middle of the night sensation, because every day has to just be the same and there's no seasonal or hormonal or any kind of variation that we follow with the natural world. You just have to have the same kind of day every day. So I think that makes us a bit squirrely. But also, we're trying to hold on to identities and things that it's time to go. You don't need to hold on to that anymore. You don't have to beat yourself up about what you didn't do or what it turns out you don't want, what's not important to you. You don't have to hold on to those old identities that were just meant to flow through in certain seasons of your life. And so we want to talk about release because also the full moon is an opposition, and the opposition is the nature of Saturn. And Saturn is about limits and surrender and kind of like, what can you do? So it might be more helpful in these moments that require release to not grasp and strain or to be punitive and be like, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. But to just have a moment of like, and it is the way it is, can't have it all, gonna learn better next time, and you move on. So here in release, we've got the themes of Saturn, but also those gravity ideas of the sun and then the earth and then the moon pulling like all the oceans and the atmosphere and every part of you that's not part of you away. So the release is supported by Saturn and the opposition, the nature of an opposition, but also the idea of the gravity of the moon pulling stuff away. So that gives us for our plant analogy, our garden analogy, this is the time when we begin to harvest and enjoy. And for our stage analogy, this is the time when you just kind of have to coast through the spotlight. Whatever that may be. And so there's not a lot of value in like having a lot of emotion, not taking it personally, you know what I mean? So we're going to release, and we're going to particularly release all the negativity because there's a lot of expectation. There's a lot of tension just inherently in what's going on. And so we're going to kind of let it all go and let ourselves relax for the next quarter phase as we just coast out of this and be like, okay, it is what it is. I tried my best or I didn't, and I feel some kind of way about that or I don't. And we move on. So my favorite way to work with these intentions, I know it's often said like it takes 21 days to build a habit, or like do it for a month, but this is a 2-week cycle. So you set your intentions, you try and work on them, and then you kind of take the heat off at this 2-week mark at the full moon. And you kind of trust that like whatever you started, if it was meant to stick, it stuck, and you'll do it as needed because now you know how. And if it wasn't, then at least you tried and now you know, so just let it go. And there isn't like, hey, we're going to keep trying with the intention, we're going to double down, we're going to refine. Some lunar cycles say like there's a refinement here as you keep working and you release down at the balsamic. But no, you work and then you assess and you recover, and then you work and then you assess and recover. So this is really like a shorter 2-week. You're just trying it, you're giving it like a good go. You're giving your body and your system a chance to be like this. Does it mesh with where we are right now to like just naturally be adopted without having to force anything? No, let it go. Yes, okay, release any expectation that it has to maintain, right? So that's how you deal with like the intentions. And then this releasing positively that we bring down into the third quarter phase is that we've got in the full moon, we've got from the full to the third quarter, right? Like, and in that phase, we have the waning gibbous, or called the disseminating. And the way this was taught to me, the way it was phrased, was she's just freely shedding and sharing light, resources, warmth, whatever. And so you're coming off of this like blind spot where you just coasted out of whatever this was, and now you're recovering emotionally from the full moon. And then you're going to like flow through that, and then it's going to become something that like, okay, you're going to do something with that flow energy. And now, because you've recovered from the full moon, now it's like if you have anything to share with that energy, share it. Share it positively. This is a release. This is a sharing, right? And if you have that shift of release of like whatever, deal with my emotions and like take a day with the moon. And then if that naturally becomes just sharing the abundance or what you learned or what you have to share, then share it. But if you don't have it to share, then we're going to consolidate for the next cycle. So things to say slash ask for our full moon. These are intentions. These are affirmations that have been illuminated and that you want to celebrate. Things you want to release, right? So we can say, I am. I forgive. I release. I celebrate. I acknowledge. And then, as always, it's important to have an I wish, right? Get whimsical with it. And so the third quarter moon is, yeah, what's ready to make space for something else? And it's okay if you're sentimental and you're holding on to stuff. And it's okay if you think, whatever, let the garden sit there for the crows. That, like, takes all kinds. There's yards out there that are filled with vehicles and old equipment. And, like, there's no morality to that. They're just there. So there's different ways to deal with stuff, and that's fine. But that is the overview of the lunar cycle. So we illustrated before we got into this paper some of the different ideas between like gravity and where the forces are, where things are concentrated. We talked about how light is moving and the idea of illumination. And then in the other videos with the basics, we talk about how certain aspects are of the nature of certain planets and how we can pull information from that. And then there's the overall story of the lunar cycle, which is often associated with a growth cycle or a gardening metaphor, but you can apply it to any kind of metaphor. The other planet that deals heavily in squares and oppositions like this is Saturn. So Moon has, in the second progress chart, Moon has about a 28-year cycle, and she cares very much about the conjunction, the square, and the opposition in the square as part of her main phase cycle. This is how we know the moon. This is how we work with the moon. We identify the moon through these aspects here, which are all of the of the nature of Mars, of the nature of Saturn, of the nature of the moon. So they're gonna kind of have some heat to them, but this is how we work with her. And then Saturn has his 28-year regular cycle, the Saturn return, and you may be a Saturnian person or heavily Saturnian influenced chart if you notice themes coming up, particularly Saturnian themes of like depression, melancholy, the asking of the why, or like doubling down and doing the business side, discipline side of Saturn at ages or in multiples of years of 7, 7, 14, 21, 28. So that could be that you hit depressive windows at these times, or it could be that you notice that, like, yeah, every 7 years, such and such seems to come around. That's going to be a Saturnian thing. So Saturn operates in 7 years. Moon operates in 7 days, right? 1 week per phase. 7 days per phase, 7 days per phase for Saturn. So there's a lot you can learn about how to work with your Saturn squares and how you can work with the lunar squares by referencing the two bodies together. They complement each other in a lot of ways. So that's essentially the basics of how I would approach the moon. So if I'm talking about setting intentions, that's where that's coming from. If I'm talking about releasing, particularly negativity, this is the whole idea of the full moon, and it's the busiest idea because we're trying to look with a clear gaze, we're trying to look with as much positivity as we can, and we're trying to just release as much negativity as we can. The structures are there to let it happen, let it go, you know what I mean? There's always tomorrow. And then what we do with the build up, tear down energy, or what we find ourselves doing. So that is our overview. Now we're going to do 2 examples using my chart. Okay, this paper is actually an attempt months/years ago. It would have been months ago because I've only had this equipment for a year, and this is like if I wanted to have like the PowerPoint screens and chapter screens, like how I would have to like have it all pre-edited and post-edited, and it's so overwhelming. So we're just doing it like this. But it's so funny how it comes around, you know? Okay, so this is my chart, and I specifically want to break down as if we were doing a Capricorn new moon, and then how I'm going to do the Taurus full moon, just so you can see like a busy place and an empty place, and how I've done it. And I'm not going to show you my journal entries because they're under the laptop, so we'll just have to do that another time, if at all. So I've got a Scorpio rising chart, and when talking about Capricorn in this house, in this sign, which is my 3rd house, I have Uranus at 7 and Mercury at 10 and Neptune at 12 and Saturn at 18 and Venus retrograde. This guy just stationed Venus retrograde at 25. Okay? We can look at other places that aren't affected. So I have my ascendant here at 9, and then I've got Fortune, Moon, Mars, 19, 22, 25. I've got, we'll do orange, Sun at 3, North Node at 16 or 17, depending which if you're using mean or true, and IC at 25. Nothing in Pisces, nothing in Aries, nothing in Taurus, nothing in Gemini. Then I have Jupiter and Chiron up in Cancer. Jupiter at 2, Chiron at 12. Nothing in Leo except for South Node and MC, but like no actual placement. Nothing in Virgo except for a lot. Nothing in Libra. And Pluto in Scorpio. So let's just do a quick little map here to see what we're dealing with. So Capricorn is my 3rd house, ruled by Saturn, and he's co-present, he's in it. So domicile. And in this place we have Uranus and Neptune. I don't use modern planet rulership, so they're not going to bring in any themes. They're just going to be there, putting some weight and some pressure and some significance into this place. And then we have Mercury, who's going to bring in Virgo 11th house and Gemini 8th house. And we have Saturn, who's going to bring in Sun in 4th house, who's going to bring in Leo in 10th house. And then we also have Venus, who's going to bring in Libra 12th house and Taurus 7th house. So when dealing with stelliums, one of the sources I came across early on asked the question of like, what does the planet want? What do all your planets want? And how are you going to do something about that? So we're going to have all these notes about Capricorn based off what we've been doing before. So Capricorn is an earth sign. We can have some notes about earth being practical and dependable. And Earth itself can be broken down into cold, which is absorbing and slow, and dry, which is defined and solo. Then we can just have some ideas about Capricorn if we want. So Capricorn is like the mountain and the sea goat. So I'm going to put uncaring efficiency, just as like a starting phrase for Capricorn. If you have something you're already working with the sign, work with that. You don't have to start from scratch every time. But this is how I would do my journals. I would, okay, Capricorn, what's Capricorn? And then I could bring in like Saturn is the ruler, and Saturn is cold and dry, and I already have notes for cold and dry, which really means Saturn is melancholic because that's the melancholic temperament. And so we can say that we have like depressive and avoid, like he's just on the outside. So we have far, limits, darkness, and I live with winter, and so Saturn for me for sure is winter. We also have ideas of like the crone, wisdom, surrender, endurance. This is tied into our idea of Capricorn. And then we would want to tie in like where is Saturn to give us support for this, and Saturn's here. So that's really nice. So we have domicile. And we have, that means that we are fully resourced and resourcing, because he's here in his own place. If he has anyone to take care of, he likely will. So that's nice. And then I can bring in some more information if I want to this planet, since he's a key player here. So in sect, he is the malefic out of sect, which means he's like the harshest or the most extreme planet, allegedly. So my hardest times will probably involve Saturn and or Capricorn. And we can look at, particularly with Saturn, is he talking to anybody in the chart that would give him more flavor? Is he aspected? And so Saturn is in sextile to my natal Pluto. And other than that, he can't talk to anybody. Pluto is square to my nodes and then has this sextile from Saturn, but Saturn is semi-sextile to the node, so we can just put semi-sextile to the node and quincunx to the south node. So that's some extra flavor. So my Saturn might be extra slow, extra concerned with material things, extra concerned with power and like transformations of power because of this helping hand from Pluto. So that we could just start building it like that. We'll bring in the far planets later because they'll take up less space. So let's look at Mercury. We're going to tie in Mercury. Mercury recently stationed direct in my chart. So there's something about he's slow and he's speeding. So still, but he's speeding up. Mercury is about communication and like navigation, and Mercury is a rising star. As the day progresses, I was born at 2 a.m. As it becomes dawn, right before dawn, you might be able to see a little bit of a Mercury up in the sky. So that would mean that Mercury is always a dry planet, but that means that he's hot right now. So it's a hot, dry, which is choleric, which we know means like something to share. And then Mercury is going to bring in Virgo 11th house. So we'll say practical friendships. And he's going to bring in Gemini 8th house. So we'll say fluctuating. I'll say communal resources. Fluctuating, like changeable, kind of like social, kind of nonchalant relationship with communal resources, things like debt, things like inheritance, things like the idea of death, that kind of thing. And then we can look at Venus, who is retrograde, which is either that she's more personal, and any of her more social significations would actually be felt more personally by me and less by the external, because a retrograde planet is as close to the Earth as it can get, so it's like a more, it's as close to you as it can ever get, so it's more personal. Or it can be delayed, like the retrograde means we're not moving in the normal order when we want to be. So like as I grow up, she will progress into her direct station, and then she'll recover that ground and she'll have like a Venus return. And so some of my Venus significations may be delayed in my life as we follow that story. We can also say that sometimes that means that those significations are denied. But I think there's just a different take on them. She's also what we call peregrine. She has no kind of dignity here. Mercury does or doesn't depending on who I'm looking at. If I'm using Ptolemaic bounds, he's in his own bounds, so he's in his own apartments. But if I'm using Egyptian, then he's just also peregrine. He's also just vibing here. They each have something to do in an earth sign, so like that's okay. But Venus doesn't have anything to speak of. She is the benefic of sect, and so she is allegedly my most beneficial planet. She's not really in a good spot though, because she is under the beams. Technically, I believe she's combust. She's really close to the sun here, within 8 degrees of the sun, so she's just leaving combustion and is under the beams. But she's also at the midpoint, the exact midpoint between Saturn and the sun. So it's like she just got out from the heat of the fire, and then this like cold wall of ice is there, and it's like, give me a break. So she's in like, someone put baby in the corner. Like she's not in a good spot. She's not very visible. She's she's directly facing Saturn. They're mutually applying to each other. So all of the beneficence that I might expect from my benefic of sect, like she's used it all up to just be like, hey man, could you calm down? To this guy who's like, who has the ability to take care of all these planets and all the places they have to take care of, but also has the ability to be a tyrant, right? So the way I've worked with this is that Saturn has to take care of me because I've got all these personal planets under his domain, and through transits I've experienced that Saturn does take care of me. So before you clutch your pearls and get concerned for me, that's how I'm working with it. If you have a planet that could be very malefic, but he's got line of sight, he has jurisdiction, he has to take care of somebody, he's got people to resource, and they can like hold him accountable, like Venus is holding him very accountable, then he will. Okay, so this is some technical stuff about Venus, that she's retrograde and what could that mean. She's peregrine, which doesn't mean too much, but she is the benefic of sect, so that's supposed to bring her up. But she's under the beams, combust, and at the midpoint with Sun and Saturn. So like that's all very tight. What's going on there? We can add into Mercury stuff is, can he see these places? So Mercury rules Virgo by trine, so that's very well resourced. But Mercury rules Gemini by quincunx, and so no, that place can't get any resources. We can look to Venus's sign, so Venus sign of Libra in the 12th house, so we can say social isolation. And then Taurus in the 7th house, practical relationship. Can she see Libra from Capricorn? Yeah, that's a square. And can she see Taurus from Capricorn? Yeah, that's a trine. So between these two planets, it's like who's doing better, who's more well resourced, whose places are more well resourced. That's up in the air. We're just getting all this detail as we can. And then notes for Venus is that we know that she's like a planet of beauty and harmony. And then we can see that even though she's very close to the sun, she is technically a rising star. So that would make her wet and also hot, just like Mercury is hot. So that would make her more sanguine, less phlegmatic, and more active and like ready, able, willing to act. Ready, able, willing. We're going to pull in that Saturn also rules Aquarius, which is my fourth house and has the North Node and the IC. So you can say that Aquarius is a place of introspection. Fourth house is private. The North Node is, there's various ways to deal with the North Node, but I'm just going to shorthand it to destiny. And the IC is home, and I'll put private again. And I'll put ancestors, because why not? And then who's in Aquarius? But the sun, which is how I shine, and myself. And where does sun rule? Sun rules a Leo, which is the stage, and needs some kind of nurturing to nurture. And that's up in my 10th house of leadership, with the MC of public life and the south node of tiring drain. Which makes sense because I don't want to be up there working. I don't want to be in the limelight. Like, I want the information. Aquarius, I want the information to shine. I have to share it, that's fine. But I don't want to be up here. I want to be down here. I want to shine at home in the privacy of my home, sharing all of this information, right? We can see how that pans out in my chart. But initially I was just writing all this down going, okay, what does it mean? How does it pan out? And then all of this comes down into an expression of the third house, which is communication, local daily life. You keep a journal, you run your errands, you talk to people, you go to the grocery store, just regular little messages and gossip and this and that. It's not so much the chores of life, which is like 6th house, it's more like the errands of life. Who do you talk to? What's going on? It can also be siblings and more of youth, childhood experiences, childhood, like primary school, local stuff, the stuff that's around because of where you live, because of the 4th house. So all of this would be my preamble, my breakdown, my journal entry for my new moon in Capricorn example. And then from this, I would be like, okay, let's set new moon intentions. Well, we didn't do the far planets. So we'll say that Uranus wants authenticity and is my planet of Eureka. That's my keyword for Uranus. And Neptune is, we'll say, mysticism. There's lots that Neptune can be, but we'll say mysticism slash dreams. So, what do all these planets want? How does this want to express? What does the third house mean for me? This is a lot of information, and I could keep going. I could draw more words out of Virgo, out of 11th house. I could draw more words out of the fact that this place is supported by a trine and this place is not, and how does that import or not significations. You can go layers and layers and layers and layers deep. If you wanted to start basic, you would start with just thinking about Capricorn. You don't even have to do it technically. You can read up about what Capricorn means, or you can think about the glyph or the symbolism, or however your chart is. You can think about where it is in that house. You just reflect on Capricorn and then make an intention on Capricornian themes. I'm going to be more disciplined. I'm going to grow when there's resources and plateau when there's not. I'm going to make a plan so that I don't feel lost and overwhelmed and out in the cold and in the dark. Whatever Capricorn you want to do. You can add in Saturn as the ruler, and then wherever Saturn is in your chart or in transit, add in that information, or just add in Saturn as the ruler and be like, how do I want to deal with Capricorn, knowing that Saturn is the ruler here? Saturn, the ruler of time and reality, and doing what you can, and then acknowledging what you can't do. Like, how does that influence what you want to do with that? And then you can add in the information that's in this house. It's third house. Okay, what does that give to you? What are the planets in there? You can expand it from there. You can give each planet its rulership and whatever may be in there, and you slowly build it up. Also, if this isn't your first time doing it, you can reflect on, what does Saturn want out of my fourth house? Well, what happened when Saturn transited here? I had a solar return reading when Saturn was right on this IC mark, and it was a very like, oh, doom, oh, your parents, oh, illness, oh, moving, oh, disaster type of reading. And I was like, nothing's really making sense with what you're saying. She was like that's all general significations. The point is, whatever Saturn's message has been through Aquarius will be his continued message as he conjuncts like an angle in that house. And it was incredibly supportive. He came through and saved me. And I know that through a couple different techniques, and generally, Gemini is a pretty good time. If something's in Gemini, if there's a lunation in Gemini or Pisces, um, if I'm having the only thing that works for me for zodiacal releasing is Gemini releasing periods, if it's happening in Gemini, it's kind of a good time. Why would that happen? Well, of all the places that Saturn disposits and rules in the end, Aquarius and Gemini are unaspected to Saturn and Capricorn. So, technically speaking, even though Saturn is very supportive and all my planets love me and my whole chart is very supportive of me, this is where that technically speaking of like Saturn's a harsh planet. When Saturn moved through Aquarius, like when he moved through Capricorn, it was my Saturn return. It was brutal. When he moved through Aquarius, it was great. He stabilized the shit out of me. He caught me, and I'm asking him to catch me again now at the square, but whatever. And why would that make sense? Why would that be a good thing? Well, he still has to take care of this, and overall, he's not a malefic planet. He's just like the most extreme because of conditions. He's right on the edge of the beams here, so he's kind of warm, even though it's a night chart. So like that's a mitigating factor. Venus is steering him up here, but technically, because he can't see these places, because this cold emanating, you just gotta cadent, like it's a cadent house as well, so we can add in notes for cadent. Um, all of that cold, draining, you just got it energy can't get into these places. And that's beneficial. These are better places for me than some of all the other places that he disposits. The 3rd, the 7th, the 11th, the 12th. These are all kind of hard places for me. I hit a lot of limits here. I don't get a lot of success or a lot of nourishment out of these places. But out of the 8th and out of the 4th, for sure I do, even with his influence when he's there. So that's how I would kind of summarize the information, and then we would get into how would I write new moon intentions for this. So I'm going to prompt myself so that I can just do like free writing, and that's how I recommend you do it. And then if it becomes a real tangible thing that I need a SMART goal for, I'll do that as well. So we have new moon intention, so I'm going to say I am ready as one. I intend as another. What else can we say for intentions? I'm curious about, and I wish. So I can say in all of this information, I'm wanting to set a new moon in Capricorn intention that I'm going to work on for 2 weeks and then let it go. And if it sticks through, then it's going to be working over the next year and a half, essentially, until the big let it go on this larger cycle. And if it's a habit or a skill or something that I start now that serves me for the rest of my life, great. What do we want to start now? Okay, so I am ready to bring my voice/message to those that want to hear it, right? Between the authenticity and having all this communication stuff lit up, and that like part of how I want to shine and relate to people with Venus, it's all there. So I'm going to bring my voice. I am ready to bring my voice/message to the people that want to hear it, instead of just trying to tell anybody and having them walk away and then me being frustrated like, oh, you're not listening. Like I'm going to save my voice unless I know I'm in front of a good audience. So I intend to respect Saturn, the limits Saturn, of my voice, third house, and Mercury, and Venus is the medical ruler of the second house, which is the throat, Taurus. She rules Taurus. I'm curious about, I'm curious about the info, like the I don't know about, so Neptune, that is revealed, that comes with my authentic voice. For Uranus, like to account for the far planets, let's do one for those. The info that comes from my authentic voice, like I'm curious to see what comes out. And that's also maybe a gentle way to play with the far planets instead of like, I'm going to do this. It's like, I'm going to watch. I'm going to see what you give me, you know? And then I wish to serve my role as a messenger of the gods slash planets, or using my voice like for them, and to be supported or rewarded, or I'll just put cradled for it by doing it. Just as I said that like Saturn kind of has to take care of me, this is what I'm banking on. I wish to be cradled. I wish to be supported. I wish to be to be shining and using my voice in this message, and to have that just give me the house and the space in which to work it in. That is my wish. I'm not putting an intention around that. I'm not going to hustle it. I'm not going to grasp and try and wring money or support or structure from it. It's a wish. If I wanted to put an actual like SMART goal intention onto these, let's see if any of that is possible. I bring my voice slash message to those that want to hear it, and I intend to respect the limits of my voice. So what I could do is I could make myself a little punch card or a little check card, and I could tell myself, you know, in this 2-week time, how many conversations am I willing to, or am I likely to have? How many times am I likely to reach out to someone or start a conversation or try and add my voice to the crowd? So let's say I'm going to aim for 3 times that I catch myself about to say something and I go, nope, I've said it before, or I know they won't listen, or like they didn't invite me, they didn't ask, my voice is tired, I don't really want to, I don't need to say that, I don't need to speak up, I don't need to save this person. They can ask me if they want. Like, I'm not going to volunteer the information. I could maybe find that 3 times in the next 2 weeks, and if they immediately get punched, I'll just add more because I'm trying to build the habit. Or I could stop there and be like, we did it, we celebrated, good job, instead of bullying my nervous system to like keep going, be more efficient. But maybe I'm going to make myself a little punch card or a little habit tracker, and I say, in the next 2 weeks, I want to keep quiet at least 3 times, or not offer what I have to say unless someone asks specifically for it. And then when you do that, you have a celebration, you thank Capricorn and Saturn and Venus and Mercury, you buy ice cream for yourself, whatever it is, you would set the SMART goal. So is it specific? Yeah, I'm gonna stay silent. I'm gonna choose not to speak. Is it measurable? Yeah, I can measure it on this card. Is it achievable and realistic or reachable? Yes, because I can measure it and I can choose not to, and I'm not gonna get punished or hurt or injured or put at risk for not speaking. And yeah, I would like to save my voice, so I'm not going to bring it to where, like, it makes sense. And then is it time-based? Yeah, I'm saying within the next 2 weeks, I want to not speak 3 times. Okay, so that's how I would make it into like an actual tangible intention if I wanted to like work on it. But you can do the vibes approach as well. You can just like sit and be like, okay, I'm ready, and then like return to this and read it or not, and just like do it the vibes flow approach if you wanted to. So that is how I would do a new moon. And then over the next 2 weeks, I would try and keep more in my mind. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to pay more attention to the authenticity, the limits. I'm trying to respect my voice and my message more so that it can have more impact when I do use it. And I can be less tired and frustrated and resentful from using it, right? So that could be an intention. Let's look at a full moon. So now we're going to look at the Taurus full moon. And the first thing we're going to look at is that this was seated in the short cycle from the Libra new moon in October, and we'll talk about that. In the longer cycle from the Taurus new moon, any given spring, and from the gestation cycle, this was seated 9 months ago was the first quarter, and 9 months before that was the new moon. So it would have been spring or the Taurus new moon, not of this year, but the year before. So spring of 2024 was the seeding new moon for this current full moon in the gestation cycle. So this Libra new moon being the full moon here, one thing that's notable is that they're both ruled by the same planet, so that's cool. We like that. But one thing that this makes me think of is that if you see someone waving and they're almost looking at you but not quite, you're going to be like, oh my God, hi. And then you're going to see that they're not really looking at you, and you're going to be like, oh, but who are they looking at? And you're going to turn and you're going to be like, what is that? So even though these places are quincunx to each other, and Venus can't technically see who is like in Libra for the Libra new moon, can't like technically see what's going on for the intentions that were set in her place for Scorpio. Maybe she can. Maybe she has this kind of little line of sight of like looking to Taurus and then following that beam of light to be like, oh, I see. Maybe that doesn't matter, because every late new moon is going to shift all of the subsequent phases into the next like sign cardinality. So that's also just a property of the type of lunation we're in. So we maybe don't have to like hash into it like what does it mean. But also this Libra new moon was a late new moon, and now we're having the full moon in Taurus. And so instead of thinking of it so much as releasing the intentions of the last one, it's maybe shining a light on the field that's at play for the coming new moon, which is a Scorpio, because Sun is in Scorpio. So like the places of light are all still lined up. It's just the trajectory of like where it started from that looks discordant. But this in itself is a regular part of the pattern, so it's not anything to pout about. Unless you want to, then go for it. So we can think, is there any significance to the full moon, to the quality of releasing, of celebrating, of illuminating, that has to do with the quincunx, of seeing something adjacent to what we started and not quite where we started? And like, is that okay? So we could tie that in if we wanted to or not. But otherwise, let's just go through the details of what's happening in Taurus so I can figure out what it is I want to illuminate, what it is I'm illuminating with. Like, not only am I illuminating longer seeds planted here at old Taurus new moons, but I'm using the light of Taurus to illuminate not only Scorpio where the sun is, but Venus, but Libra where that last new moon was 2 weeks ago. And shining the light and like putting the grow light onto the fertile Scorpio sign where sun is right now, and like putting in nutrients for something to start then. So there's different ways to look at it depending on how things are actually shifting out over the next couple weeks and in the last couple weeks. So Taurus is also an earth sign, and I didn't put cardinal down here, so we could say that the difference between all that earth and this earth is that it's stubborn because it's a fixed and it's ruled by Venus, and so it's the most sensual sign, or the sign the most concerned with the senses and having a lived experience that you like. So my example is always food. It's like having a meal that you like the look of, you like the sound when you bite into it, you like the smell of, you like the taste of, and you like the mouthfeel of. There's not one part of that sensual experience, that sensory experience, that you dislike. You like it all. So this is your favorite meal because you like every aspect of it. There's no compromise. So this is the idea of Taurus to me, particularly Taurus as like ruled by Venus. And then we have that Taurus is my seventh house of partners, clients, any one on one, including if I lean more to one on one friendships. And we can see that this place is trine to the ruler Venus, who is retrograde in third house Capricorn, co present with Saturn and applying to, and that she is combust, retrograde, and at the midpoint between Saturn and Sun and Saturn. So, how does that influence my idea that, oh, relationships might be hard, particularly sibling relationships, or the local everyday communicating here and there errands might be draining because this cadent, third house is a cadent, so it's tiring, whereas the seventh house is angular, so it's like eventful. If I wanted to expand this as not a beginner and use my idea of transits, I can remember that, well, what's happened in Taurus recently is that Uranus moved through Taurus from 2018 to now, and in 2018 I became single and started identifying as ace, really putting like a cold wall, Venus, Saturn here, ruler of the seventh, on my relationships, and that was a a moment, a journey of authenticity, Saturn or Uranus, a journey of authenticity through the place of relationships, right? So I could have that influence or inform this as well, right? Particularly since Uranus is moving in and out of Taurus right now. So how does that inform what I want, my full moon observance of the seventh house to be? So I have some ideas about seventh house stuff, and I'm going to want to illuminate and reflect. I want to illuminate and to prepare. I want to celebrate, and I want to release primarily negativity. So I want to illuminate and reflect on, we can say, over the last 2 weeks from the Libra new moon. We can say we'll say it's like April or May of 2025, just to look at this year. How have I been doing? What can I see in my progressions of Taurian things? And then overall, this full moon in the gestation cycle is giving us from April, May of 2024. So what particularly did I start in May 2024 that I can see is like truly coming to fruition about now? Illuminate for prepare, because this is the first out of two of the Scorpio Taurus lunations, as they always happen in pairs. We have a new moon or a full moon in one sign, and then 2 weeks later the opposing, and then it goes around. Just the order of this looks like it's backwards, but it's not. It's just a full moon first and a new moon after. So what can this Taurus light feed to Scorpio starting, Scorpio cycle, Scorpio seeds that are coming in 2 weeks from now when we have the Scorpio new moon? What can I be shedding, sharing, letting go of to make space for whatever is trying to grow here in Scorpio? What can we celebrate? Again, from the same time frame as illuminate. However, it's nice to give a separate space to celebration so that you have a space to like just be real and to take it personal, to be moody if you want. You have a space to grieve and to be like, oh, I suck, or whatever. That didn't go the way I wanted, or the way I'd hoped, or the way I planned, and now I have to adjust. And then you're going to separately take out some celebration. So don't always force yourself to like only be positive. Like be real, assess, illuminate, acknowledge, oppose it, like with clear line of sight, and then pick out what to shine the light on for real. You don't have to shine your light on all your failures. And speaking of those failures, we're going to release them. We're going to let them go. Now that we've identified them, there's no need to keep them and put them in our pocket and carry them forward and create more seeds from those. We can let them go. So what is being illuminated from the last 2 weeks? Well, I've been doing astro. And as the moon is my first planet and Venus is my second planet of like working with, this makes hella sense that it would be Libra and then Taurus. So thank you, Venus. I can also say from May 2025, what have I been doing? Um, what is illuminated in my one-on-one spaces since May 2025? I'm kind of over it. I'm kind of over the one-on-one. I'm not getting a lot out of it when I have it recently. It's not rejuvenating, it's not filling me up. I don't look forward to it, and it's not a sensual, experience for my whole body that I'm interested in having. It's like a little social mental prison for the most part. So I'm ready to release a lot of that. And then what can I see is coming out as a fruition right now that began specifically in May 2024? Well, May 2024, I believe, is about the time that I kind of finished up having a lot of new, like, astro lectures and info to learn. I kind of like, this was about the time that I kind of like plateaued and petered out and like was just finding things here and there and kind of had hit the limit of what's available for like my price point and what I'm looking for of what I was able to find. So I was starting at that point, the like transition from like I'm a student only in taking information to like, okay, what am I going to do with it? Should I really share how my approach to it? Like that space opened up to like chew on stuff to be like, what am I going to do with it? And now here I am, I'm releasing it. So that's very cool to look at those patterns. I can also take a look at the gestation pattern overall and see every 3 years, do I have similar themes or patterns that I can identify of, you know, full moon topics, whatever that means, in this theme. So we're having 2025, 2022, 2019. So right now, I'm kind of releasing stuff that started of like May 24, and then that would be May of 21, and that would be May of 18. And like that gets pretty far. I don't have big memories of that. It's sometimes easier to look at the new moon or the full moon. Taurus is also the furthest place from me, and Venus is not a super accessible planet. Baby's in a corner. She's behind a wall. Um, so like having all this information just off the top of my head. Sometimes in different places, yeah, I have it. Sometimes I don't. But what have I been like realizing, reaping, harvesting, and releasing about this time in 2022 and about this time in 2019? Well, about this time in 2019, I was going through it in my Saturn return, and in about 6 weeks from this time, like forward, I shave my head for the first time, so that's kind of Venusian. And like how do I agree to interact one on one? Who am I showing up as in the one on one and in the larger sphere? And then in 2022, in October, what was I releasing? What was I seeing? What was being illuminated? What was I harvesting? Well, I was gearing up into learning astrology. Also at this time, see in some of my other videos I talk more about like physics and having a diploma where I learned like electricity and stuff. This is when I was in the heart of learning it. This October 2022 is when I was in the heart of beginning to like learn and beginning to make that transition into applying lunar aspects, right? Like this Taurus full moon was the full moon that I skipped before I started my lunar observation. And then right now I'm releasing what I know. And so all of these points seem to have something to do with taking in information and like what am I going to do with it after? Like what's the point of having this information? So that's not very concurrent with seven house or Taurus or one on one, but that is a theme I am noticing. And so I've got to go with it. Up for more review. But that's how I use this technique, is to be like, what's going on, and to let my lived experience tell me more about my cycles than the technicalities of the chart. If you notice a cycle that is consistent and comes up with the same themes, and it's like, but it shouldn't be like that because that's not what the chart says. You have a life and you have experience. Trust it. fit it into here somehow, right? Venus is the planet that is like leading me deeper into astrology at all times. So maybe that's what this relationship is my relationship with Venus and the information she wants to give me as someone who has like her voice to speak with or is speaking on her behalf from her place in my third house, right? Like maybe you just have to take it down the chain of command to where the ruler planet is to find how it makes sense. Hmm? What am I ready to prepare for my Scorpio new moon intentions that are happening in 2 weeks, which is on my rising sign? Well, maybe I'm allowing like a deepening of relationship with Venus and also astrology. Maybe I'm going to shine this light of cultivation and of like, no, I want to feel it in my body and I want it to feel good as like, yeah, I'm going to trust deeper into this path and into this message and into this cycle. So maybe that is something I can be releasing is like hope and optimism and like feed and growth fertilizer for this new moon that's coming. That's a way to look at it instead of needing the full moon to follow the new moon. How can the full moon be giving like a fertilizer, a heat lamp, a grow lamp to what's coming? And you don't know what's coming, so like you just do your best to give what you think is needed. What can I celebrate? I can celebrate that Venus has let me know and work with her. Thank you, Venus. And I can release any negativity I have about relationships, friendships, the social sphere, all of it being hard. Of course it's hard. Look at how this is set up. I'm going to release any like personal feelings about like, should have been a separate way or they should have treated different or like we all should have tried harder or we all should have tried different approaches. I'm going to let it go. And if it comes back around, I can work on it when it comes back around, but I'm going to work on my best to let it go. And then you can do your like affirmations, right? Now that you've looked at you now that you've assessed all the information, you can do this stuff down here, right? So my full moon affirmations may be something like I release, I forgive, I celebrate, let's say I thank myself for, and then always nice to have a wish for the whimsy. To be really dramatic, I release any expectation that one-on-one relationships will be fulfilling. The one-on-one relationship that is fulfilling is the relationship I have with Venus, thus the relationship I have with myself, right? With my chart, with my own embodied experience. I forgive all of the shoulds and the supposed tos and the judgments I was giving myself on how my one-on-one relationships have been in the past. And now that I like have the astrology to look at Uranus's transit through Taurus, my seventh house of relationships, and how that lines up with my like relational reality, I am willing to forgive, or I'm ready to forgive. I forgive any judgment I had to myself over this time and like it shouldn't be that way, or like what are you doing isolating, you should get out there. Like I'm gonna forgive all of that like that negative mental self-talk and judgment. I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna celebrate my deepening relationship with self, and that I'm learning more and more at all times to prioritize self in relationships. Like what's the point of being in relationships with people if you are not coming as yourself, because like they can just hang out with a mirror if they need to. People want to be in relationship with you, and so you have to bring you into it and not whatever you think someone wants to be. So I'm going to celebrate that I'm deepening my relationship with self. I'm going to thank myself for quitting my job. Not because it has anything to do with anything, but just because that's what I want to thank myself for doing. And I'm going to wish for partners to share resources, right? Because the eighth house supports the seventh house. And so I'm going to wish for, new relationships or people that come into my sphere that like want to shower me with resources. It's the only thing on my mind, team. Both of my chart rulers, my sectolite and my chart ruler, are in the second house of money, but nobody's in the house of work. And the in the joy of God, the ruler of that is Moon, and Jupiter's there. My chart rulers can't see my ascendant, but Jupiter can by trine. Jupiter can't see his ruler, who can't see his ruler, because that's a mutual reception loop. But what if they trusted each other and they were there with each other's permission, particularly since Jupiter has exaltation in Cancer? And so my little mantra is, I'm not here to work. I'm here to be supported by God. Okay? Fingers crossed, team. That's what we're working on. Okay. That's what I got. Thank you so much. Okay, here's the chart of the moment for this portion of the recording, where I'm going to look at this moon manual. Now this thing, get away from me. This thing is available to buy if you are wanting to support me a little bit. It's $3 on Buy Me a Coffee. You can go to my Buy Me a Coffee /WishThinker, go to shop, and it's here. But I am going to share it here with us, and then I'm going to turn it sideways so you can take screenshots if you want, so you have it for free. But what I do recommend is that you just tune in to the lunation episodes that I'm going to do weekly with the new moon, the first quarter, the full moon in the third quarter, and all of the things that I have in here will be not only in the video that, if you're watching this, you just watched, that has all the basics of how I deal with the moon, but in all those other videos, it's going to be pieced together. But if you want it all together, this was my attempt, and it is like what it is because this was originally on Etsy. Etsy has a file size limit, so I had to figure out how to put everything in here crammed into one. And so like this template, as you saw from how I just did the moon stuff, this template isn't big enough. But this is what we have, and then we have a little example here. And then I have putting in how to turn it into a SMART goal if you want to. And then you can write down, if you have this or if you take the screenshot, you could just write down how your chart is set up for reference. And then I made this for this year, so here are the lunations for this year. Full moon, new moon, as the first one was a full moon, and the eclipses are noted. Notes about new moons, and a SMART goal, notes about full moons, and then the exit page. So I'm going to turn this. Okay, so I'm going to scroll through every page, and then you can take a screenshot if you want. You can also review the video we just did, and you can tune in as we go. So that's a title page. We don't care about that. This is some stuff about the waxing moon, the growing moon. And this is some stuff about the waning moon, the decreasing moon. Here is an overview on the 3-year gestation cycles. Here is my notes on eclipses and manifestation. So what I was taught is that you don't mess around with manifestation during eclipses. You just take your hands off the wheel. Universe moving too fast, you let it do what it's going to do. You stay open and flexible. As I said in the other video, or in the earlier portion of this video, that I originally started my lunar practice by skipping an eclipse without knowing it, so I just have observed that whole time. As well, it is very nice to take that break for anywhere from 2 to 6 to 8 weeks to just be a person and use what you've learned and use your new sense of self and intuition. And even if that's really hard, that'll make you appreciate when you get to use your tools again, when you get to look at the chart and find out what's going on and pull your tarot cards. It just makes it so much nicer. It's nice to take that break and have a little reset. And then we have the template. Really basically for both new moon and full moon, you're just going to take down all the details you can about the sign, the ruler, what's in there, what's in the houses, what else do they rule, however complicated, however robust and dynamic you want to make it. Ideas about the gestation cycle and how to look at that. And then if you are doing like an intention or an affirmation, different ideas for making it basic, intermediate, and more advanced. You just make it as complicated as you want to, or as simple as you want to. Ideas for intentions and for affirmations, new moon and full moon. Here is an example of that, as condensed as I can make it, but of course we have the examples that we just went through. Here is notes that I've compiled on SMART goals and how you can approach them. Here's a fillable area if you want to write in your chart information. And here are the 2025 new and full moons, full and new moons. A space for new moon notes with intention prompts. A space for your SMART goal intentions. A space for full moon notes and affirmation or full moon prompts. And the closing title page. Okay. So thanks very much and bye bye. Hey team, thanks for watching this far. This is my impassioned plea for support, and I'm lulling you in with pictures of my little boy here. So I am basically in a game of chicken with the universe, and I can't go back to the real world and real work, and I need this to work somehow. There's no business plan, there's no receipts, I just need it to work. And so I am seeking your patronage. The benefits of patronage are varied and personal, but here are some ideas from johncanningco.com about the benefits of patronage and maintaining art and artistic presence and allowing the work that artists and mystics and hermits do to be what they're sharing instead of the work of survival, and then maybe they get to share or practice on top of it. I'm here, I'm ready to share, I'm ready to keep doing this work and more work, but I need support, I need help. So personally, the benefits of patronage would be that you would essentially be helping to ensure my survival. If I can focus on the sharing of information, including what has helped my survival, instead of focusing all the time on surviving, that would be obviously ideal. I'm not asking to thrive, I'm not asking for wealth. I'm asking for the type of abundance that lets me live quietly in isolation with not very much except for a roof over my head and food in my tummy and my cat's tummy and sharing this information. The main benefit would be that you know that you're supporting a lonely hermit, neurodivergent, who has minimal support in the world. And you would know that you are helping to share art, esoteric knowledge, and hope. Not only the messages of hope that I may be able to spread, but the beacon and the welling of hope that would become my person, knowing that I am supported in this work. If you want a bigger explanation or a longer spiel about my situation or about the situation I find myself in, where I am now here, begging you to please offer your patronage and help, that is linked below at the last timestamp. Otherwise, here is the contact information. A few dollars for a season, a few dollars for a chapter of my life. Literally anything is so helpful. If my situation changes and I am no longer seeking survival support, if I get to a place where my survival support is taken care of and I can move into growth and what people may call abundance or wealth, I will for sure update this little message and not continue it in this fashion. But until then, typo, e-transfer. You can e-transfer support or email inquiries to the same email at wishthinkerdesign@gmail.com. Any tips, donations, or there's some Bibles and readings available at buymeacoffee/wishthinker. There is also a tarot YouTube on Wishthinker. Tips and donations can also be sent via PayPal at Hermitarius. And I do have a Patreon. There are no tiers or extra tidbits available. That can come after. Once I know what you want, I can give you what you want once you are my patron. But Before then, I am not trying to figure out what people would want to buy from me. I am just trying to share the work and stay alive. And you could help.